Okay, good evening, everybody. So we are back again. Yesterday, you saw a new release from Power BI. So a lot of new things came in our April feature summary. So on-object interaction, new tooltip auto scale, even composite models went GA. New DAX functions, rank and row number, but we decided this time for something else. So we decided to chat deeper on dynamic format strings for measures. And for that, as every time, our co-host from Redmond, Jay, is with us. And
Hello.
hi, Jay. How is it in Redmond?
Live from Redmond, almost Redmond. I live close to Redmond, but fine. Anyway, for all
Yeah.
intents and purposes, live from Redmond. Life is good. Um, Summer is about to break through. Not entirely yet, so still waiting.
Lucky you.
And from product team, not from product team, from developer perspective, engineers, we have Sergey with us, who was the guy behind the feature, and we'll talk more about him with him about that. So let's kick it off. So Sergey, gentle introduction. Can you tell us a little more about yourself? What's your current role within Power BI team, and what's your main focus?
Hi, my name is Sergey. I'm a developer on the pro tooling side of the Power BI application. Um the first feature I've developed so far is the dynamic format string. So tying together the AES implementation with the UI. So mostly working on the UI side and a little bit of the modeling engine. Um, I'm local to Charlotte, North Carolina. Uh, and that's about it. Oh, I've been with Microsoft for about a year now. I joined last March.
Yeah,
Yes, the
cool,
Sega
cool.
is really new. So imagine being relatively new to the team, and then dynamic format strings being your first feature you actually ship. I mean, how cool is that, right? And then getting the excitement from the community about it. I mean, it's
Yeah, that
awesome.
was a fun ride for
Yeah,
sure.
I can imagine.
Absolutely. First one and great one, I would say. So,
Yes.
the April update was amazing, and the fact that we picked up this feature, I think, speaks a ton about how important is this. And I know within the community a lot of excitement caused this new feature. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more from your perspective. Of course, we will now try to find uh, creative ways to use it in our Power BI solutions. But from your perspective, uh, can you tell us a little bit more about the feature and how it can benefit us as Power BI developers?
Sure. So it makes the presentation of measures much more flexible, at least of measure values. So you can add dynamic format strings to any measures, and then when you use them in a visual, it will affect the way that value is printed out. So far in the community, we've seen it being used to create data labels. So, for example, K for thousands, M for millions appended to the end. And also, people are using it to display if you have multiple KPIs. One is a currency, one is a percentage, or just raw numbers. Then you can also use dynamic format strings to sort of map and present each one individually. Something I think that will be popular is maybe on-the-fly currency conversions. So that if you
Yes.
have, your data in one currency, but you want to present it individual to every country that the measure applies to in their currency, then you can easily create a mapping, I feel like.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
that's the
go on,
example that
Jay.
I showed in at the Dutch Power BI user group when I was there early March. And the funny part is that the example that I used actually didn't do it correctly. So the dynamic forward string was applied, but I forgot to change the thousand and decimal separators. So I switched from USD, which uses commas as thousand separators and points as decimal separators. So I switched from USD in the demo to Euro. So then the symbol changed. Great. Right, the feature worked perfectly, but I was wrong that I forgot to change the format string to now use a point as a decimal separator, as a thousand separator, and comma as a decimal separator. So the demo was not entirely good, but that was totally a user error. The feature worked perfectly. But yeah, I think that is going to be a huge value for the users to be able to do those kind of like conversions on the fly and show things as they should be for whoever is looking at it.
Yeah. Another thing, you could probably use it to highlight outliers. So during development, I was using a thing where if the measure value is less than the average, then it prints out low, and then the measure value, and then high if it's above. But you can also do it with like 5% or however much you want.
I think community will find a lot of creating ways to utilize this new feature, because when I first heard about it and when I saw the release now, I already can imagine a ton of use cases where previously we all struggled, needed to be way more creative than with this new feature to be able to dynamically show some things. Now, Sergey, you and your team enabled all of us to make it quick, so to satisfy all those weird wishes from our user base.
I'll tell you I'll tell you a little secret. So yesterday I was working with a colleague together on one report, and this thing which you mentioned, switching between different KPIs, and that's exactly what we had, switching between percentages and whole numbers. And yeah, it was always painful to do this in Power BI Desktop. And yesterday he was like, okay, now I need to adjust this. I was like, wait, just this afternoon, wait please, few more hours and you will not feel that pain anymore. So thanks. I think many of those small pains that were annoying now will disappear with this feature.
And that's just great. I mean, the fact that you've been able to just save somebody from that pain now and just go like, hey, just wait a couple seconds and it will all be better. I mean, that's perfect, right? I mean, what else can you ask for us to ship a feature that can immediately add value the second it's being released? I mean, sometimes you release features that people are slow to adopt, right? Because it just takes time for them to grasp and grok how can I really use this, right? Of course, if we add a new button or a new like a slicer button that would reset all slices or apply all slices, that immediately makes sense. But there's sometimes features in there that takes time for people to wrap their head around, like, how would I use this? And I think this is a great example of a counter feature where for loads of people it's like salvation, right? Almost. It's like, wow, finally it's here. It'll save me so much time.
And Sergey, how is it can you describe us from an engineering point of view? How does the process looks like when developing a feature like this? How challenging was it, and how much testing it involves actually?
A lot. It was pretty challenging because of the sheer amount of code that you have to wire together. So I think there's about 4 or 5 models that have to be made aware of dynamic format strings. So you have the SQL Server, the analysis services, already is aware, but the modeling engine was not. So like the desktop application, it has to be implemented there. But it has to go through Tom as well. So Tom was also aware. Then we had the SysDL model is also its own thing. And from that, we build the conceptual models and the client conceptual models, and then view models for every component that presents measures. Even the little field list to the side, that has its own implementation as well. So it was And at every point, we would have automated testing, so with unit tests implemented. And we have a team of testers, I believe. There is a desktop test team. We received a few bugs from them during development. And of course, developer testing as well. Pretty much everyone every member of the team was doing testing on their machines as well.
Yeah, and I think Sergey touched upon a really important point, that it may look like this is very easy, relatively easy. It's a small feature, right? It's just one box and a little drop-down thingy. That's it, right? No, there's so much involved to make this happen, and you basically touch all the layers, as Sergey said. Like, it works on the engine level, so you have to touch all the layers in between before you can actually do the UI thing. Maybe the UI is maybe the simplest part, actually. I don't know if Sergey can probably tell more about that. Also, I think, yes, the test team is definitely involved. There's loads of bug bashes, what we do as well, which basically means after engineers have done their own testing, basically, they go like, hey, share it to everybody else. And everybody else gets the chance to bug bash all the features coming for the new release. We do that a couple times before each release. And everybody else basically means engineers, PMs, everybody, like anybody involved in the team. So that's where bugs come in. Then we have a test team whose official duty is to test the features. And then, of course, we also have accessibility testing to make sure that it is also useful and accessible for people that have to rely, for example, or rely on text interface or speech interface or whatever, right? So all of that testing is done. And of course, still bugs creep in. I mean, no testing is ever perfect. I think I've saw a couple bugs already with row number recently that we released. I think we have a couple bugs there. But yeah, so it's just a lot of effort. It just takes a village to ship features like this.
Yeah, but it's a great step forward. And I would like to ask Sergey, what are the plans regarding this feature? Can we expect some improvements, some adjustments, or what is the general plan for this feature for the future?
Well, I do expect it to be fully supported. So improvements, adjustments, probably going to need a little bit more data before I know what to focus on. I am working on a couple minor bugs at the moment, so nothing critical. But
We still didn't discover those.
yeah, hopefully I'll get them before you do.
I think, Jay, what you mentioned, I think that's the biggest sometimes misconception for people out there. So we all sometimes request those looks like tiny features. Can you improve this or that? And usually now, also through this live from Redmond podcast, we are discovering that it's actually not such a small change for a lot of those things. It's actually a big chunk of work invested in tiny small feature. Looks like tiny small feature.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's deceptively, like a feature like dynamic format strings looks deceptively simple, right? As I said, it's just a text box. I can enter some DAX in there. It's just a text box. That's it, right? Oh, that's easy. You just added the text box. Would that have taken you? I don't know how long ago we started with this, but really, does this take you so long? And that's of course something we have seen in the community a lot, is that people go like, I want feature XYZ. And then on the outset, that might be a very simple UI thing, like as Christian was saying, like a simple button. But depending on what that button should be doing, there's like all the lists to touch. One pet peeve of mine, for example, is expand and collapse on matrices, right? The top one requested idea. Sounds simple, right? It's not, because it has to go through everything. And in comparison with this feature, we actually had a couple items already, like AS already, like the engine already supported dynamic format strings. With this plus and minus thing, none of the parts in the stack that make up this whole product support the plus and minus thing on the matrix today. So building that is just crazy hard and a lot
Yeah.
of effort, where it will just show as a tiny little 5 by 5 pixel, if you will, icon on the screen, that when you click, it just opens up, and when you click it again, it just collapses. It sounds very simple. It's not.
Yeah, I can
And
imagine how many things it's touch in the background. I can't remember if we were talking with you in one of the previous episodes, or with someone else from product team, and it was related to some minor change, some minor feature, and then we were explained that basically if you change something on Power BI side, it will break something on Excel side or whatever.
Yes.
So there are some uh,
Yeah,
overlapping here and there. Yeah.
absolutely. So, Sergei, can you give us a little bit more, like talking about a feature like dynamic format strings? When did you start developing on this? Like, when did this start?
So the first tech spec was finished in, I want to say, August, maybe end of August. And
Right.
yeah, so it took what, 6 months?
6 months
About
from
6 months, yeah.
from technical people getting involved. Before the tech spec, there's a PM spec. There's architecture discussions. So I'm not entirely sure when the first PM, I could actually look at it. I can probably look it up when it was written the first time, but I wouldn't be surprised that it has been at least a year in the making from us actually actively start moving away from just talking about it, like, oh yes, it would be great to have, to actually write down stuff about what it should be doing. And then eventually, how are we going to get there, right? So PMs talk about what and why. Like, what's the customer value? Why do we need this feature? What should it do? Engineers like Sergey then take that and convert it into tech specs that talk about, okay, this is the what. How do we do the what? And then once all that is said and done and signed off on, we can actually start implementing. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was a year in total.
meaning if we push strongly from community now, we can expect a requested feature next year this time.
That's a great way to twist my words.
Live from Redmond number 15.
Well, I mean, on average, maybe, but there's also features that we can push through quicker.
Yeah, of course.
Because some of the plumbing or some of the components are already there. And there's definitely also features that we can't push through that quickly because they're simply larger. Right? I mean, dynamic format strings in the broad scheme of things is, I don't want to like disparage the work, but it's a smallish feature. It's not like a huge new UI or multiple buttons or whatever, right? It's relatively small. It's powerful. It's very powerful and flexible. But if you just look at like the actual change that was made and what you can see as a user, it's small.
It would be good to invite our watchers to put in chat if they have already discovered some creative ways to use dynamic features. But for you, Sergey, how big team was actually involved in this feature? Was it you, or it was, you mentioned testers, but how big team is needed to deliver something like this?
So there were 3 of us developers working on it, just on the UI and modeling engine bit. Me, Joe Roxbury, and Eugen Lang. Then I don't know how many testers there were on the team. And we had to work closely with a few other guys from AS, like Rashid, Sarwar, Oren on the Tom team, forget his last name, and Kevin from Modeling Engine. So the Modeling Engine team actually was also very closely involved. Personally interacted with about 3 people on their side as well. So close collaboration between multiple teams of developers.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. I think it's interesting for our community as well to see as Jay said, that tiny box there to change a format, how many people involved and how much time.
Oh,
This is
yeah. Now that you
that's
mentioned
really
the text box,
really
the IntelliSense bit,
changing a view.
as soon as you add IntelliSense to a text box, that's going to require a lot of time to get right. So Chelsea Iden was a big help with that as well. I forgot about the UI guys. So
Yeah.
probably another 3 or 4 developers there that I worked with.
Yeah, I think if you count it all, easily it gets into like 15 to 20 just developers that either were like a major part of this or involved and consultant and making sure that everything is aligned.
Absolutely.
And then so then forget about the design, forget about like PM, test, everything, architects, like forget about all those. Just people actually working on the code, 15 to 20, I would estimate.
Yeah, that's a huge team
So
effort.
I looked it up. By the way, the spec. I just, data. The first version, I was overestimating it. The first version that I can track from the PM spec is June 24th, 22. So it is not April, it was June, but still.
Okay.
3/4 of a year.
Yeah, but thanks for completing it. Sergey, may I ask you one question? You mentioned the modeling engine. Can you please explain a little bit more? What do you consider as a modeling engine? I assume it's not the same as an analysis services engine.
No, so it's another layer. Analysis services is on the bottom, so it's the database. On top of that is TOM, which is the tabular object model. Yeah, it makes sure that the database is semantically correct. So the database just makes sure, we don't have circular references, but as long as there is a reference, it's good to go. TOM actually makes sure that all of those references make sense, that there's not anything broken. On top of that is the modeling engine. So it has further business rules that TOM doesn't want to concern itself with. A good bit. So things like synchronizing your reports between your proxy models, that lives in the modeling engine. And keeping track of changed properties, what you change on your local report versus what's there on the remote. I think a good amount of data import operations also take place in the modeling engine there.
I think also the relationship validations, right? Like when you drag and drop a relationship, that validation.
I wanted to ask, probably relationships are also in that layer.
I think so.
Sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it has to go back to the database to check, but I think the original logic of what rules we want to check lives inside of the model engine.
Oh, and of course the schema changes. So whenever you click a button or you drag anything around, the UI will talk to the modeling engine backend to actually get that executed.
Right.
Interesting. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Yeah.
And Sergey, by the way, said proxy models, which is a term you might have heard or might not have heard before. It's an internal name. And just because I'm the PM for the feature, I have to say something about that.
Go ahead. We all love this feature.
No, just joking. But that has been, with this April release, actually been going GA. So that is the feature previously known as Direct Query for Power BI datasets and Azure Analysis Services, and then renamed to Direct Query for Power BI datasets and Analysis Services. Now renamed to Composite Models on Power BI datasets and Analysis Services. So that is what proxy models are.
I think the next goal is. I think, Jay, the next goal is to shorten it a bit more. You need to find a catchy name. Every time when I'm doing a session or a training or something, I try to remember what's the full name for the feature. Well, and I think I always miss at least one word.
It is now called composite model. It's now just a composite model. That's what it is. And that composite model happens to live on a Power BI dataset or on analysis services. And with that comes special tricks, special things to take into account. anyway, I didn't want to derail the conversation, but since Sergey said proxy models, which is not a term everybody might be familiar with, I mean, yes, we have used it in the past in the community. I just wanted to explain that is the composite models on Power BI datasets feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jay.
Yes, Sergey, one question for you. So can you, because you are the first one in live from Redmond coming from engineering team, and can you tell us how does a life looks like being an engineer in Microsoft? What's your usual day, week, month, or how is it?
Be
Well,
honest.
so we have a daily Scrum meeting where the entire engineering team gets together and just sort of gives updates on the progress of their features. Lets everyone know if they're stuck on something, if anyone can do help or can help them out. Well, it's not every other day we have that. There is some live support that we do a round robin sort of arrangement where everyone takes a week and handles incidents that are coming from customers. That usually when we're on support duty, we kind of set our feature work aside and try to focus only on the incidents that are coming in. And then, it's just pretty much coding the rest of the time. Reviews of pull requests also make up a good amount of the day. So we will review our code internally and then let the sort of the architects, other teams take a look at it as well before it gets into the code base.
And that's a very important thing that Sergey calls out, right? Every change has to be reviewed by somebody else. Like, it's not that Sergey can just go in and change something about Power BI and just like.
Yes, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, to some extent. But also, I mean, if Sergey was malintended, right, then this is a good thing, right? And yes, it's also unfortunate because loads of funny Easter eggs have been caught that way and not made it into the product because somebody said, like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, this is funny, but it doesn't add any value. So not everybody sees the humor of some things that engineers try to push in or PMs ask engineers to add in. So it's not that loads of Easter eggs are in the product, unfortunately. So anyway, it's just code health is very important, of course. So, and I think PMs then work with engineers, right? So the engineers do the actual work. I've been saying that on the stream for a long time now. Like, engineers are the actual heroes here. PMs just get to talk about it and hopefully share something to engineers that they can actually understand and implement. So yeah, the actual brunt of the work is not on the PMs, it's on the engineers.
Well, I'm not sure I would go that far because anytime I have a question like, you want this button on the left or the right, it's always the PM who has the answer. So that really helps out when there's a number of things you can do and you really need clarity on how it should be done.
Yeah, it's a collaboration for sure.
Ambiguity.
Yeah, it's a collaboration for sure. There needs to be clarity among the two teams. But yeah, I'm always amazed by the level of technical progress from the engineering team, from actual engineers, like the performance, the quality of the code. Sometimes the code is just like too good to be true. It's like, wow, this is magic. I couldn't ever be able to do this as a PM. Like, I script code, but I don't allow me to write like code on Sergey's level, right? That's like, for me, that's like a magical skill.
Yeah, it's a different language, definitely.
Yes.
When we are talking about collaboration, so ideal collaboration. Sorry, Nicola, go on.
No. Go ahead.
No, I was saying when we are talking about collaboration, ideal question for collaboration is our favorite one. Now, what's Sergey, Jay, Mikola? What's your number one missing feature in Power BI?
From my point of view, I would really love to see debugging tools and maybe a more streamlined build process, because right now we're pulling in all of these dependencies from other areas of code that we don't control. And even if we're trying to step through the code, eventually it just dives into another area which we don't have the symbols for. And you kind of just sort of guess as to what's going on in there when you would really like to know exactly what's happening. So maybe even on the UI side, that's probably the biggest thing. It's a bit of a pipe dream because just of the sheer complexity and size of the code base, it's not all going to fit in memory, but would be nice to see some movement there.
And I think loads of, like, everybody in the community agrees with you. Like, even from for their work, they want this, right? So yeah, that will be absolutely great thing to get. Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, dark mode. Do we ask?
I mean, dark mode. We talked about it before? I think so.
I think so. Yeah.
So dark mode. I mean, really, how sometimes these decisions are made, what we're going to build, is also driven by business. Like, how many more users are we going to get because we build dark mode, versus how many more users are we going to get for us to build dynamic format strings, right? Compare those two things together. It's easy to see why we build dynamic format strings, because it actually adds value. Yes, that dark mode adds value because people can look at the screen longer, don't get fatigue. I'm not saying it doesn't add any value, but it adds functionality that might win people over to use Power BI from whatever tool they're currently on. So dark mode in itself doesn't add functional value for the tool. It adds comfort for the user and preference customization for the user, absolutely. But for the tool itself, you just look at what the tool function does. It doesn't add anything. Not saying it's not important. It's just when we get to those decisions, these are the kind of conversations that we have. And now, eventually, it's a well-kept secret that we as Power BI, we want to ship as part of Office, right? And we're slowly moving towards that direction, be more like Office. Well, guess what? Office also has color schemes. So I'm just waiting for the moment that Office says, okay, if you really want to be like us, these are the things you have to do. Dark mode or color schemes will be on that list. I'm sure it will be, and then we'll get to it. But then dark mode is being implemented as a driver, as part of us wanting to be more like Office, right? Can you see then how it starts making sense, and we can get all the hands together to make this happen? Because then dark mode is a blocker for us becoming more like Office, which would potentially add more users to our product, right? So dark mode by itself doesn't add anything, but Office would add more users to our product. Hence, dark mode needs to be here because it's a requirement for us to be more like Office.
Yeah, and I heard that pie charts look better on dark mode.
Well,
No comment. Okay, yeah. Guys, time is up for us. It was so fast. Yeah, I know that both of you are very busy. For Augustine and me, it's easy because it's evening on our side. We'll slowly have a light dinner, and that's it. But for you guys, we know that you have a lot of work to do still. So, Jay, once again, thanks for being our magnificent co-host. Sergey, thanks for joining us. It was really a pleasure to have you with us, and thanks for sharing all your insights, and thanks for all the work you and your team put in this feature. We really appreciate that.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks.
Well, thanks for having me again, and talk to you all later. Have a good day.
Yeah.
Have a great day. Thanks everyone for joining.
And for the watchers out there, I think Jay will be missing next time when on the himself, and I think it will be super exciting. So stay tuned. We'll see who is replacing from.
We lost Augustine. Yeah.
See you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, Jay. Bye, Sergey. Thank you.
See
Have
ya.
a great day. Bye bye.